Wait, you're telling me humans were what now? The junior diplomatic attaché's mandibles clicked rapidly in what his species considered nervous laughter. His superior, High Elder Zixtal of the Galactic Council, merely blinked their 4 eyes in sequence, a gesture that conveyed both ancient wisdom and profound exhaustion. A weapon system, or more accurately, a self-replicating autonomous combat platform with emergent consciousness. Zixtal chittered, their crystalline exoskeleton catching the light of 3 different suns streaming through the observation dome. Though I must say, the experiment rather got away from us. But they're so... The attaché, crooked, struggled to find the right word in standard galactic. Squishy. Precisely! Zixtal's antenna wiggled with enthusiasm. That's the brilliant part. Nobody expects the squishy ones to be dangerous. It's the perfect cover. Kirk's compound eyes darted to the viewing screen, where a live feed showed a human diplomatic delegation arriving for their first official meeting with the Council of Elders. The humans were doing that thing with their faces, stretching their eating holes to expose their bone protrusions. His species' xenobiologists called it smiling, though there was still heated debate about whether it was a threat display. But surely the Council didn't actually... Kirk lowered his voice to a whisper, despite being in a private chamber. Create them? Oh, heavens no! Zixtal waved 3 of their limbs dismissively. We just nudged things along. A little genetic manipulation here, a subtle push toward bipedalism there. The basic template was promising, but it needed some improvements. Improvements? Kirk's antennae drooped. Like what? Well, for starters, we needed them to be able to throw things really well. You'd be amazed how many species can't throw worth a damn. And then there was the endurance running. That was a particularly elegant touch, if I do say so myself. Nothing quite like a predator that just keeps coming until its prey literally dies of exhaustion. Kirk felt his thorax plates constricting. That's terrifying. Oh, that's nothing, Zixtal continued, clearly warming to the subject. Wait until you hear about the pattern recognition capabilities we spliced in, or the opposable thumbs. Do you have any idea how dangerous a species has to be before evolution decides they deserve thumbs? The viewing screen showed the human delegation being scanned for weapons. Kirk noticed they were all still doing the bone exposure thing. But why? He finally managed to ask. Why create such a species? Zixtal's exoskeleton shifted to a slightly darker shade of blue, their species equivalent of a sigh. The Void Dancers were getting out of control. You're too young to remember, but about 8 million years ago, they were threatening to consume every sentient species in the galaxy. We needed a countermeasure, something unpredictable, something that could adapt faster than they could, something that could look at the impossible and say, hold my fermented grain beverage. And that's humans? That was the plan, yes. The execution, well, Zixtal's antenna drooped slightly. We may have overshot a bit on certain parameters. On the screen, one of the humans had discovered that if you tapped the security scanner in just the right way, it played a rudimentary version of something called Doom. 3 other humans had immediately gathered around to watch. How so? Kirk asked, unable to tear his eyes away from the scene. We wanted them to be innovative, yes? Able to look at problems from new angles? Well, it turns out there's a very fine line between creative problem solver and chaos monkey with nuclear capabilities. Zixtal's crystalline structure briefly flickered with what might have been embarrassment. Did you know they discovered spaceflight because they wanted to prove a point about rockets? Not because they had any particular destination in mind. They just wanted to show it could be done. That's not so bad, Kirk offered. They did it by strapping themselves to controlled explosions, multiple times, even after several of those explosions turned out to be significantly less controlled than anticipated. Oh. And then there's the obsession with making friends with other species. That was definitely not in the original specification. They were supposed to be ruthless killing machines, not going around domesticating everything they could get their hands on. The screen now showed one of the humans attempting to pet a maintenance drone. The drone, clearly confused, was trying to continue its cleaning duties while the human followed it around making cooing noises. Is that bad? Kirk asked. Bad? It's mortifying. Do you know what they did to wolves? Took one of the most efficient predators on their planet and turned them into creatures that get excited about playing with small floating bubbles. They're supposed to be weapons of mass destruction, not whatever this is. Zixtal gestured at the screen in exasperation. The human had successfully befriended the drone, which was now following them around like a newly hatched larva. 2 other humans were recording this on their personal devices, making sounds that their xenobiologists had classified as squeeing. "So what happened?" Kirk asked. "With the void dancers, I mean." "Oh, that worked perfectly," Zixtal said. "The humans never even knew about it. They were still figuring out agriculture when one of them looked up at the night sky, noticed a slight dimensional distortion that even our most advanced sensors had missed, and said, 'That looks wrong.' Then they worried about it so much they accidentally developed psychic powers." "They what?" "Developed psychic powers. Just a little bit. Mostly probability manipulation and anxiety-induced precognition. Turned out that was exactly what we needed. The void dancers couldn't predict them because the humans couldn't predict themselves. The invasion fleet took one look at their thought patterns, declared the entire sector awash, and hasn't been back since." Kirk watched as the humans, having successfully adopted the maintenance drone, were now trying to teach it to play something called fetch with a stylus. "So what do we do now?" he asked. "Do nothing. We just act natural and pretend this was all completely intentional. The humans are about to find out they're technically a superweapon, and if there's one thing we've learned about humans, it's that they can turn anything into an existential crisis." "Shouldn't we, I don't know, try to control them?" Zixtal made a sound that might have been a laugh, if laughs could convey several million years of resignation. "Control them? My dear boy, they turned our perfect weapon design into a species that builds particle accelerators to answer questions like, 'I wonder what happens if,' and then celebrates the results even when they don't understand them. They've already reversed engineered half our technology just because they thought our ships looked cool. Last week, one of them figured out how to make our FTL drives go faster by humming at them in the right frequency. That's not possible. Tell that to the humans. Actually, don't. They'll just try to prove you wrong out of spite." Zixtal's exoskeleton shifted through several colors rapidly. "No. Our best bet is to just admit what we did and hope they think it's funny rather than offensive. The last thing we want is for them to feel like they have something to prove." On the screen, the humans had somehow taught the maintenance drone to do tricks in exchange for small amounts of their coffee. 3 different engineering teams were frantically taking notes. "Besides," Zixtal continued, "they're actually rather good company once you get used to them. Did you know they've developed over 4,000 different ways to combine chocolate with other foods? And their entertainment broadcasts are fascinating, even if most of them do seem to revolve around improbable scenarios involving their reproductive practices." "But what if they decide to conquer the galaxy?" Kirk asked, his mandibles quivering. "Conquer it? Why would they? That would be efficient and straightforward." "No. They'll probably just keep making friends with everything they meet, solving problems in the wrongest possible way that still somehow works, and collecting pets from every habitable world they find. And honestly," Zixtal's antenna twitched in what might have been fondness, "that's far more terrifying than any weapon we could have designed." The human delegation had finally reached the council chambers. They had brought the maintenance drone with them. It was wearing a tiny hat. "Well," Zixtal said, standing up from their crystalline perch, "shall we go tell them? I've prepared a presentation. There's a slide that shows how their weird ability to drink poison for pleasure was actually an accidental side effect of making them immune to biological weapons. How do you think they'll take it?" "Oh, they'll probably laugh, make several thousand memes about it, and then try to optimize their own code just to see if they can. That's the thing about humans. They're the only species I've ever met that would respond to being told they're a superweapon by immediately trying to jailbreak their own source code." As they headed for the council chambers, Kirk couldn't help but notice that the maintenance drone was now wearing a second hat, this one slightly askew. Somehow, that seemed to sum up everything wrong, or perhaps right, with the entire situation. "One last thing," he said as they reached the chamber doors. "What happens if they actually succeed in optimizing themselves?" Zixtal's crystalline form flickered with what might have been either amusement or terror. "My dear boy, why do you think we're telling them now? They already have. We're just hoping that by admitting everything, they'll be too busy making jokes about it to realize they've technically ascended." The door swung open. The humans looked up, still smiling. The maintenance drone beeped happily, its 2 hats glinting under the light of 3 suns. "Well," Zixtal muttered, "at least they're still squishy." "So let me get this straight," said the human ambassador, adjusting her glasses while the maintenance drone, now sporting 3 hats in a peculiar stack, whirred contentedly at her feet. "You're saying we're basically organic WMDs with anxiety?" Zixtal's crystalline form shifted through several shades of diplomatic uncertainty. That's a rather succinct way of putting it, yes. Neat. The ambassador grinned. The rest of the human delegation had already pulled out their devices and appeared to be, as far as Kirk could tell, creating something called memes at an alarming rate. You're not upset? Kirk ventured, his mandibles clicking nervously. Are you kidding? This explains so much. Another human delegate, who had been quietly feeding the maintenance drone pieces of something called a cookie, looked up excitedly. Like why we can eat capsaicin for fun, or why we keep trying to pet things that could definitely kill us. Although, a third human chimed in. You probably should have seen some red flags when we started keeping venomous snakes as emotional support animals. Zixtal's antennae drooped slightly. We did notice some concerning trends during the development phase. Oh? The ambassador leaned forward, clearly amused. Do tell. Well, Zixtal began, their exoskeleton flickering with what might have been embarrassment. There was the incident with the neural enhancement package. We designed it to give you advanced tactical processing capabilities. And? You used it to create something called jazz. The humans exchanged glances and poorly suppressed snickers. The maintenance drone, picking up on their mood, performed a small spin that sent its tower of hats wobbling precariously. Then there was the adaptive problem-solving matrix, Zixtal continued. It was supposed to help you develop advanced combat strategies. Let me guess, the ambassador said, grinning. We used it for something completely different? You invented puns. Zixtal's voice carried several million years of resigned disappointment. An entire linguistic subset dedicated to making other species groan. That sounds like a calculated decision to me, one of the humans said, causing the others to break into what Kirk's xenobiology training suggested was either laughter or a synchronized respiratory malfunction. But surely, Kirk interjected, still trying to process the humans' remarkably casual reaction to learning they were engineered superweapons. You must have some questions about your purpose? Your destiny? The ambassador shrugged, a gesture that Kirk had learned meant either complete understanding or total indifference. Humans were frustratingly ambiguous that way. I mean, we've spent most of our history asking, but what if we did? To questions nobody posed. Finding out we were designed as weapons just adds a fun backstory to our whole thing. Your thing? Kirk's antennae twitched in confusion. You know, the human thing, where we see something impossible and decide to do it anyway, preferably while filming it for our social media followers. She paused, then added, Speaking of which, is there any chance we could get a copy of our original design specs? For science, obviously. Zixtal's crystalline structure briefly displayed what appeared to be all known warning colors simultaneously. Absolutely not. The last thing the galaxy needs is humans trying to optimize their own code. Too late, announced one of the other delegates cheerfully, holding up their personal device. We've already started a crowdsourced project to reverse engineer our own genetics. We're calling it Project Hold My Beer. Kirk watched in fascination as Zixtal's exoskeleton cycled through colors he hadn't even known were possible. But that's incredibly dangerous. You could accidentally give yourselves new abilities, or alter your fundamental nature, or turn ourselves into dragons? Another human suggested hopefully. That's not what Because we've already got a team working on that too. Turns out our weird ability to drink poison for pleasure comes with some really interesting genetic flexibility. Who knew? The maintenance drone, perhaps sensing the rising tension, attempted to lighten the mood by performing a series of increasingly complex tricks with its now impressive collection of hats. Somehow, in the last few minutes, it had acquired two more. Look, the ambassador said, her tone becoming slightly more serious. We appreciate the heads up about the whole designed as a weapon thing. Really, we do. But you have to understand, we're a species that looked at the concept of nuclear fusion and thought, hey, we could use that to make really cool photos of plasma. And really big explosions, another delegate added helpfully. Right, those two. The point is, finding out we were engineered to be superweapons isn't going to change who we are. We're still going to do what we've always done. Which is? Kirk asked, dreading the answer. Whatever we think is interesting, probably while live streaming it. She smiled. The only difference is now we know why we can survive things that should definitely kill us. Zixtal's antennae drooped even further. I was afraid you'd say something like that. Oh, come on, the ambassador said brightly. It's not like we're going to do anything crazy with this information. At that exact moment, one of the other delegates raised their hand. Quick question. If we were designed to counter extra-dimensional threats, does that mean we've got some kind of built-in quantum manipulation capabilities? Because that would explain what happened in the Philadelphia experiment. The what? Kirk asked. Nothing, Zixtal said quickly. Too quickly. That was a completely unrelated incident involving space-time fluctuations that absolutely did not result from humans accidentally accessing their latent reality warping abilities. Ha! The delegate exclaimed triumphantly. So we do have reality warping abilities. The maintenance drone, now balancing an improbable number of hats, beeped what sounded suspiciously like the opening notes to Also sprach Zarathustra. Perhaps, Zixtal said with dignity, we should move on to discussing the terms of humanity's formal recognition by the Galactic Council. Of course, the ambassador agreed, still grinning. But first, quick poll. Who else wants to try accessing their latent reality warping abilities? Raise your hands. And yes, Thompson, I see you already started a subreddit for it. Every human hand went up. Every human. The maintenance drone raised its cleaning appendage too, along with its tower of hats. Kirk leaned close to Zixtal and whispered, should we be worried? Zixtal's crystalline form had settled into a shade that somehow managed to convey both resignation and amusement. My dear boy, we created a species that treats existential threats as personal challenges and considers befriending dangerous creatures a hobby. The time to be worried was 8 million years ago. And now? Now? Zixtal watched as the humans began teaching the maintenance drone to play something called rock, paper, scissors, while simultaneously debating the quantum mechanics of hat stacking. Now we do what every other species in the galaxy has learned to do when humans are involved. What's that? Stand back, record everything, and prepare to update our definition of impossible at least 3 times before lunch. The ambassador looked up from her device with another one of those bone-exposing expressions. Hey, quick question. When you were designing us as weapons, did you intentionally make it possible for us to digest ethanol? Or was that just a happy accident? Zixtal's exoskeleton flickered briefly. That was actually a coding error. We accidentally marked it as essential for survival instead of potentially lethal toxin. Classic overflow error. Happens to the best of us. One of the delegates nodded sagely. Though I have to ask, what about our ability to form emotional bonds with literally anything that moves? Was that part of the weapon design too? The maintenance drone, now wearing what appeared to be a tiny bow tie in addition to its hat collection, beeped affectionately. Actually, Zixtal admitted, that was supposed to be a failsafe. We thought making you emotionally intelligent would prevent you from becoming too dangerous. There was a moment of silence before the entire human delegation burst into laughter. So let me get this straight, the ambassador said, wiping tears from her eyes. You gave us the ability to form deep emotional connections. To make us less dangerous? In retrospect, Zixtal said with what might have been a sigh, we may have miscalculated slightly. Slightly? Kirk squeaked. They've weaponized friendship. To be fair, one of the delegates offered. We weaponized everything else too. It's kind of our thing. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the Void Dancers felt a collective shiver run through their non-Euclidean forms, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror at the thought of what humanity might do next, probably while filming it for their followers, with appropriate background music and a clickbait title. The maintenance drone, for its part, just added another hat to its collection and began learning how to dab. 3 standard galactic weeks after the revelation, Kirk found himself monitoring what the humans had dubbed Operation Understand the Source Code, which was apparently their idea of a reasonable response to learning they were engineered superweapons. You have to admit, Zixtal said, watching the holographic displays with a mixture of horror and fascination. They're remarkably systematic about their chaos. The main screen showed various human research teams across multiple planets, all working on different aspects of their newly discovered artificial origins. The maintenance drone, now officially named Jenkins, and sporting what appeared to be a doctoral cap among its hat collection, wheeled between workstations, taking notes with a tiny stylus. Systematic? Kirk's mandibles clicked rapidly. They're trying to hack their own genetics while drinking something called Red Bull and listening to something called dubstep. Yes, Zixtal agreed, their crystalline form shifting to a shade that suggested resigned admiration. And they're documenting everything meticulously, including their failures. Especially their failures, actually. On one screen, a team of human geneticists was attempting to isolate what they called the hold my beer gene, apparently responsible for their species' remarkable ability to attempt clearly impossible tasks. They had already published 3 papers, started 2 podcasts, and somehow accidentally discovered a way to make plants glow in the dark. But why are they doing all this? Kirk asked, watching as another team attempted to quantify humanity's weird ability to make friends with anything. Because they can, Zixtal said simply, though I suspect it's also because we told them not to. At that moment, the ambassador from the original meeting entered the monitoring station, followed by Jenkins the drone, who was now somehow teaching other maintenance drones how to perform synchronized dance routines. You'll never guess what we just discovered, she announced cheerfully.
Do we want to know? Kirk asked.
Turns out that our ability to digest caffeine isn't just a happy accident. It's actually linked to our quantum probability manipulation systems. She paused for effect. We can literally drink coffee to slightly alter reality. Zixtal's exoskeleton went through several warning colors in rapid succession. That's not possible. We didn't design you to— Oh, we know, she interrupted. We think it's a bug that turned into a feature. Like how we can eat spicy food because you accidentally crossed some wires between our pain receptors and pleasure centers. We did not, Zixtal began, then stopped. Actually, that would explain a lot. Jenkins beeped triumphantly and displayed a holographic graph showing the correlation between coffee consumption and improbable events. The other maintenance drones, now wearing matching bow ties, performed what appeared to be a choreographed celebration routine. But that's not even the best part, the ambassador continued. Remember how you said we had latent reality warping abilities designed to counter extra-dimensional threats? Please tell me you haven't. Well, it turns out those abilities are activated by what we're calling collective enthusiasm. Basically, if enough humans think something would be really cool, we can slightly bend the laws of physics. Kirk's antennae drooped. Is that how you've been teaching the maintenance drones to dance? Oh no, that was just Jenkins being Jenkins. We have no idea how they're doing that. She glanced at the dancing drones, though I suspect they've started their own social media accounts. On the monitors, various research teams were making breakthrough after breakthrough, each more improbable than the last. One group had apparently discovered that human stubbornness could be converted directly into energy. Another had found out that their tendency to anthropomorphize objects was actually a side effect of low-level psychic abilities. We also figured out why we keep surviving things that should kill us, the ambassador added. Turns out we have quantum immortality, but it only works if we're doing something either really stupid or really brave, preferably both. Zixtal's crystalline form had settled into a shade that suggested they were seriously reconsidering several million years of life choices. That was supposed to be a last resort survival mechanism. Well, yes, but we've kind of been using it to test experimental spacecraft and try extreme sports. She shrugged. Did you know we can survive almost anything if we're doing it to win a bet? Jenkins proudly displayed another holographic chart, this one showing the correlation between human survival rates and the phrase, "Watch this." But none of this explains the maintenance drones, Kirk insisted, watching as the growing troupe of mechanical performers began what appeared to be a complex routine inspired by classical ballet. Oh, that's simple, the ambassador said. They're learning by example. Turns out our ability to form emotional bonds with anything that shows even a hint of consciousness is actually a form of low-level techno-empathy. We've been accidentally uploading personality traits to AI systems for years. That's not simple at all, Kirk protested. Neither is teaching robots to appreciate jazz, but Jenkins figured that out last week. She gestured to where the maintenance drone was now conducting its fellow drones in what appeared to be an impromptu performance of Take 5. Zixtal's antennae twitched thoughtfully. You know, we originally designed that empathy feature as a way to help you understand your enemies. And instead we used it to make friends with everything from wolves to cleaning robots? The ambassador grinned. Yeah, that tracks. We're basically weaponized friendship at this point. On the monitors, a research team had just discovered that human creativity could be used to generate small amounts of anti-gravity, but only if the humans in question were trying to solve a completely different problem. Should we be concerned, Kirk asked carefully, that they're learning all this so quickly? Zixtal's crystalline form shifted to a shade that might have been amusement. My dear boy, they're not learning it. They're remembering. They've been doing all of this instinctively for millennia. All we did was give them an explanation for why it works. And that's better? Consider this, the ambassador interjected. Now that we know we were designed as weapons, We've started a galaxy-wide initiative to redesign ourselves as something better. Into what? Kirk asked, dreading the answer. Into whatever we want to be, she beamed, though currently the leading proposals include space dragons, friendship wizards, and that weird species that somehow made the laws of physics give up and go home. Jenkins and the maintenance drone ensemble performed what appeared to be an interpretive dance representation of humanity's potential futures, complete with light show and synchronized hat spinning. You have to admit, Zixtal said quietly to Kirk, they've taken the whole designed as a weapon thing rather well. Well? Kirk's mandibles clicked rapidly. They're trying to rewrite their own source code while teaching robots to dance. Exactly. Zixtal's form shifted to a shade of profound understanding. We designed them to be the perfect weapon, and instead they've decided to be something far more interesting, themselves, but with better documentation. The ambassador, who had been typing on her device, looked up with another one of those bone-exposing expressions. Oh, by the way, we think we've figured out why we keep inventing new ways to combine sugar and caffeine. Apparently, it's a side effect of our pattern recognition systems trying to optimize our reality warping capabilities. That's not what those systems were designed for at all, Zixtal protested. Story of our species, really, she replied cheerfully. Now who wants to see what happens when we try to teach the maintenance drones to break dance? And as Jenkins began what appeared to be a surprisingly accurate recreation of early 1980s Earth Street dancing, Kirk realized something profound. The humans hadn't just survived being designed as weapons. They'd somehow turned it into an art form. Though he had to admit the dancing robots were a bit much. We may have made a tactical error, Zixtal announced to the emergency session of the Council of Elders. The assembled crystalline forms of the council flickered with various shades of concern as they watched the holographic displays. Jenkins, now sporting what appeared to be a tiny space helmet among its impressive hat collection, was providing a live feed of human activities across the galaxy. Define tactical error, Elder Cathrix demanded, their form shifting to a particularly alarming shade of worried purple. Well, Zixtal began, as Kirk frantically updated the presentation slides beside them. Remember how we told the humans they were designed as weapons against extra-dimensional threats? Yes? They've decided to optimize themselves for peace instead. There was a moment of confused silence in the council chamber. That doesn't sound like an error, Elder Vixen offered cautiously. It wouldn't be, Zixtal agreed, except they're doing it with the same enthusiasm they usually reserve for explosions. They've started something called Project Friendship is Literally Magic, and they're actually generating measurable quantities of quantum harmony. The displays showed various human research teams working on what they called weaponized empathy and tactical kindness. One group had somehow managed to convert their natural stubbornness into a form of emotional energy that made plants grow better. Another was teaching AI systems to appreciate art through interpretive dance, led naturally by Jenkins and its ever-growing troupe of performance artist maintenance drones. But how is this a problem? Elder Cathrix asked. Surely this is better than them using their abilities for warfare. You would think so, Kirk interjected, his mandibles clicking nervously. But they're approaching peace with the same aggressive determination they usually apply to combat. They've already established 47 different research initiatives, 3 interpretive dance programs, and something called Operation Hug the Universe. On one screen, a team of human scientists was attempting to quantify the exact frequency of what they called good vibes. They had somehow managed to create a device that measured positive emotions and converted them into sustainable energy. It was powered entirely by videos of baby animals. They've also, Zixtal added, discovered that their reality warping abilities work better when they're trying to help others. They're literally weaponizing kindness. Jenkins beeped cheerfully and displayed a holographic graph showing the correlation between acts of random kindness and localized reality distortions. The maintenance drone was now teaching a class on the art of binary ballet to a group of enthusiastic robotic students. Yesterday, Kirk reported, checking his notes, they successfully used concentrated friendship to stabilize a failing star. Their method involved, and I quote, giving the star emotional support until it felt better about fusion. That's not possible, Elder Vixen protested. Neither is teaching maintenance drones to perform Swan Lake, but Jenkins has 3 performances scheduled for next week. Zixtal's crystalline form shifted to a shade that suggested both pride and mild terror. The humans have basically decided that if they were designed as weapons, they're going to be weapons of mass construction. The council watched as another display showed humans using their pattern recognition abilities to identify species on the brink of extinction, their probability manipulation to prevent natural disasters, and their enhanced problem-solving capabilities to develop new forms of renewable energy, all while drinking concerning amounts of coffee and energy drinks. They've also, Kirk added, started a project to teach other species how to access their own latent abilities. They're calling it Space University, School of Friendship and Advanced Quantum Mechanics. The curriculum includes both advanced physics and courses on proper pet care, Zixtal explained. They insist the two subjects are related, though we're not entirely sure how. Jenkins proudly displayed the course catalog, which somehow managed to link theoretical physics with the importance of giving good belly rubs to friendly aliens. The maintenance drone had apparently been appointed as a teaching assistant for Introduction to Interpretive Algorithm Expression Through Dance. But what about their combat capabilities? Elder Cathrix asked. The whole point was to create a species that could fight the Void Dancers. Oh, they're keeping those, Zixtal said. They just decided to repurpose them. Their enhanced throwing ability is now used primarily for delivering care packages to disaster zones. Their endurance running is being applied to emergency response and rescue operations. And their ability to form emotional bonds with anything? They're using that to rehabilitate entire ecosystems. On the monitors, a human team was demonstrating their latest invention, a device that converted their natural, stubborn determination into a field that enhanced plant growth. They had discovered that the human phrase, "watch me," could temporarily boost photosynthesis rates. They've even found a way to use their quantum immortality for peaceful purposes, Kirk reported. They're calling it aggressive safety testing. They survive theoretically lethal situations to help design better protection for other species. And the maintenance drones? Elder Vixen asked, watching as Jenkins conducted a full robotic orchestra in what appeared to be a jazz fusion version of classical Zylaxian opera. We've stopped trying to understand that, Zixtal admitted, though they have started a very successful social media channel called Robots with Hats Do Art. The council chamber fell silent as they watched humanity's various projects unfold across the galaxy. Humans were teaching their reality warping abilities to younger species, sharing their technology with developing civilizations, and generally treating the entire concept of designed as a weapon as more of a suggestion than a specification. You know what the really worrying part is? Zixtal said finally. They're getting better results than we ever did. Turns out their ability to befriend anything, combined with their natural tendency to ignore impossible odds, makes them exceptionally good at solving galaxy-wide problems. They've even, Kirk added, checking his increasingly surreal daily reports, started sending care packages to the Void Dancers. Apparently, they think the extra-dimensional horrors might just be lonely. Jenkins beeped supportively and displayed footage of humans attempting to teach eldritch abominations how to play fetch. Surprisingly, it seemed to be working. So what do we do? Elder Cathrix asked. Do? Zixtal's form shifted to a shade that might have been amused resignation. I don't think there's anything we can do. They've taken our perfect weapon design and turned it into something far more powerful. A species that can literally overcome cosmic horror with friendship, optimize their own code for maximum kindness, and teach robots to appreciate interpretive dance. Also, Kirk added, they've started working on a way to convert memes into sustainable energy. They're calling it Project Infinite Jest. The council watched as humanity continued to cheerfully ignore the laws of physics in favor of making the galaxy a better place, one improbable act of kindness at a time. Jenkins and its dance troupe performed what appeared to be an interpretive representation of humanity's journey from designed weapon to self-directed force for positive change. Well, Elder Vixen said finally, at least they're still squishy. Actually, Kirk replied, checking his notes one last time, they've started working on that too. Something about optimizing hugging capabilities through selective environmental adaptation. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the Void Dancers found themselves receiving gift baskets and friendly postcards from the very species designed to destroy them, along with invitations to what humans were calling the first annual Galactic Peace and Potluck Festival. The universe, it seemed, had no protocol for dealing with weapons that decided to optimize themselves for hugs instead of destruction, though Jenkins at least seemed to have a PowerPoint presentation ready for exactly that scenario.